So good morning, folks. It's great to see a pretty packed room here. Thanks for taking the time to come to our session. My name is Samir Nori. I'm joined by my colleague Dayanand Sharma. We're on the cloud solutions team at Cohesity, and we're very excited to also have Tyson Clark from Airbud Entertainment. Tyson's responsible for all of IT infrastructure at Airbud. Just show of hands, how many folks heard of Airbud here? Okay, not a whole lot. So we've got a cool little video clip. When Tyson comes in to speak, that give you a sense for what Airbud does. So like the session is title is focused on building a hybrid architecture for enterprise backup and recovery. Really going to do this in 3 parts. I'm going to sort of kick it off, give you a little context about Cohesity as a company, our solutions, our value proposition, the problem we're looking to solve. Pass it over to Tyson, who's going to really walk you through their story, how they're leveraging Cohesity on AWS, the challenges they had, and the benefits they're deriving. And then Dayanand's going to walk you through a demo of our product. So that's the agenda for today. So just by show of hands, wanted to get a sense, how many folks here heard of Cohesity at this conference before? Okay, so a few hands. Any folks came to our party last night? Okay, there's a couple of folks. So my voice, I'll apologize for my voice a little bit. I'm feeling a little bit of the after effects of that party. But it was a rocking party. We had Pitbull out there with Shaq as a DJ. So I tried to party not too hard. It's rough to have a session right after that, but hopefully we'll provide you some valuable information here. So let's kind of get started. Just quick backgrounder on us as a company. We're about a 5-year-old company. Where our mission really is focused on redefining secondary data and applications, and really reinventing all the different workloads that secondary data and applications comprise: backup, archival, disaster recovery, test dev. We're looking to sort of redefine the way customers approach that and really innovating on that. We're founded by Mohit Aaron. Mohit's got a long pedigree in distributed systems and storage. He was one of the leads on the Google file system, and was also the CTO of Nutanix, the original CTO and co-founder of Nutanix. Some really strong pedigree. Like I said, we're about a 5-year-old company experiencing some tremendous growth. We're very proud of the customers, some of the logos of our customers you see here, including Airbud. There's a number of other enterprise customers. We have broad adoption across really every vertical you can think of: financial services, healthcare, government, higher ed, so on and so forth. So we've got a lot of strong adoption, and we're backed by some of the best investors in the world with Sequoia Capital and SoftBank. So we're about 800-person company now, growing very fast. Like I said, our mission is really around redefining secondary data and apps. So when it comes to storage, all of you, or most of you in the room, right, are using a variety of different storage services from AWS for different use cases. Whether it's using EBS for powering your databases or transactional applications, structured data things, or whether you're using sort of on the object storage side, S3, S3IN or Glacier, right, for archiving to the cloud, for big data analytics. I spent a number of years in the big data space before Cohesity, and S3 is basically the new sort of default data lake, right? So all of you are using these services in in a variety of different ways. And then there's also things that on sort of the data transfer side with Snowball. My purpose of showing you this slide is that we integrate with all of these services on a native basis, and our platform has been built from day one to be cloud native, right? That was one of the key design principles when the company was started, and in terms of the design patterns for developing the platform. And that's, I think, a big differentiator for us compared to some of the other solutions you see out there, particularly on the legacy or older side of things. And so really from a data protection backup standpoint, there's a few different key considerations that all of you or some of you are probably already aware of, thinking of, and are when you look at solutions that forms a key selection and evaluation criteria for you. There's obviously sort of RPO and RTO, right? And you want to sort of meet your SLAs in a time frame that's appropriate. We definitely like to sort of address this, and with us, customers are benefiting from being able to get their RPOs and RTOs in minutes, not days and not hours, right? And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go forward. Policy-based backups. This is one thing we see come up again and again in our customer base in terms of existing solutions and legacy solutions they have don't really come with that SLA-driven, policy-driven approach, and they're looking for a way to get that, right? We see this pattern coming over and over again. That, along with the ease of use, is a big thing you'll see in the demo that Dianon's going to walk through in terms of how easy we make this for customers. Automation. Being able to bring your level of automation to the entire backup process and recovery process, whether it's more sort of taking into consideration the level of integration you need to have from an API perspective, reducing sort of the manual steps you might have. That's another sort of key consideration we see. Ease of use. I talked about this. Simplicity is a big factor when customers look at us and why they choose us for their backup and recovery solution. Obviously, you want reliability when it comes to your restores, and being able to have that level of confidence that your data is going to get, you're backing it up, but you're going to restore it the way it was. And then finally, from a compliance perspective, everything is sort of tied, right? Particularly when it comes to long-term retention, and that's the use case we're going to spend a good amount of time here today on, is being able to have and meet your sort of compliance requirements from your sort of audit side of things, or from a risk or policy side of things. So really, we've been focused at Cohesity on solving really the legacy data protection and the challenges that exist in that environment. I like to call it a crisis of complexity that's existed in this market or in this space for a number of years. On the diagram, you see there is a mix of, typically customers have 4 or 5 different solutions for addressing different pieces of the puzzle, if you will, right? And all of them are sort of piecemeal. There is, for backing up physical servers, databases, virtual machines, et cetera, customers typically, when we go in, have a mix of master servers, media servers, there's sort of tape libraries, and then there's a target storage device, right? And if you take this one step forward, some of the challenges here are really around, it's all fragmented. So I talked about sort of the crisis of complexity. They're all fragmented. Each of them has their own interface, and lots of those interfaces are outdated, sort of using Java based products or Java-based standards for building those interfaces. So it's clunky, it's inefficient, and we hear customers spending millions of dollars on this infrastructure. And then from a cloud perspective, it's not built for the cloud. So typically, customers then, if they want to bring in the cloud, they're going and getting a separate product as a cloud gateway, and then that really is only good for long-term retention, and you can't do anything beyond that, right? So when we built our solution, our platform, these were the sort of key challenges we look to address in the market and solve for this, right? And how we're able to do it is we really help simplify that entire mess that you saw before on the previous slide. So enter Cohesity and our data platform that basically abstracts away all that complexity that you saw. So our data platform serves as the target storage device that you'd need. We then also have our backup software that integrates with the target storage piece, and so that's basically what you'll see in action in the demo. And so we're able to bring a level of efficiency and consolidation that customers when they look at our solution, they're like, wow, this is amazing. Not only do I have sort of, cost savings, factor here, but the level of agility it helps bring to their, backup and recovery workflows is something they've never seen before. And then from a cloud perspective, we integrate natively with, the storage services I showed you on, on the first slide. So we integrate natively with, S3 and Glacier. We have some recent new integrations, from a cloud native backup perspective that enable you to back up, EC2 instances. So we're designed really to sort of help you on-ramp to the cloud very easily. And like I said, the cloud native factor when customers look at us from a selection viewpoint is a key factor, as they think about the different options they're thinking about. So our platform really, just to give you a sense for what kind of workloads and applications can we protect, we can sort of spread the gamut, right, of what you typically expect. We can back up, physical machines. We can back up, virtual machines, VMware, Hyper-V, databases, Oracle, SQL Server, and then on the NAS side, be able to protect, NetApp, Isilon, or any other, NAS device. And so then our platform really comes in, 3 different editions, if you will, right? Sort of to span the what you'd need from a core data center perspective, what you need, in the cloud, and what you need in perhaps a remote office, a branch office, or kind of on the edge, right? And the key thing here is it's one platform across all of that. So it's not a different piece of software for on-premises or for the cloud. It's one platform. And in a hybrid world, which I'm sure all of you, or most of you, have, that's actually another key point in terms of being able to have the same platform on premises, and also in the cloud, and be able to sort of manage that from a single interface. And you'll see that in the demo. So let's talk a little bit about our solutions, right? The first solution I wanted to spend a couple of minutes on is really around long-term retention. So a typical workflow for a customer here is they're backing up their applications or data to us on premises, probably keeping it on Cohesity for, let's say, the first month or for 30 days, and then archiving it to S3 and Glacier for long-term retention. So our capability here is Cloud Archive that really helps customers move data to the cloud for long-term retention and archive it. And there's a few different benefits we bring to the table here, right? So we're enabling this long-term data retention. From a capability standpoint, we bring from what we are able to provide on premises in terms of global deduplication, encryption, compression, all of those carry over to the cloud. And Diana will spend a little bit more time in terms of addressing that and sort of how we do that. But just sort of keep that in mind, because I think that's sort of another big differentiator for us. And then we're also then able to provide granular recovery both at sort of the VM level and the file level. And so that's something else that you'll see in the demo as well. So that's kind of solution one. Most of our customers, when they start with us on their hybrid cloud journey or their progression, long-term retention is where lots of customers start with us and then sort of build upon there in terms of the other solutions, right? And so that's a typical pattern we see. However, we're also starting to see customers sort of start with us more in the cloud, and not typically maybe have an extension of the data center and use us from a long-term retention perspective, right? So we're starting to see that as well. The second use case then is, so I talked about sort of backup on premises. I talked about long-term retention. So if you're thinking, well, what do you do for me from a cloud backup perspective, right? So this is where we're enabling native backup of EC2 instances and being able to protect VMs that are out there. And so the way we do this is we have API level integration with AWS snaps, and we're able to bring all our platform capabilities to backing up EC2 instances. So global dedupe, compression, indexing, search, right? We've got a very powerful indexing and search capability that helps you search across what you have on premises, but also in the cloud, right? And so from a benefit standpoint, and this is from a product perspective, our cloud edition really sort of is coming into play here with our data protect software from a backup perspective to enable this capability. So there's a few different benefits we see customers accruing here, right? So we're integrating with APIs. So now not only do we have physical agent-based backup, but we also have sort of API level backup. So let me go back one slide here. Built it too quick. We're helping bring an ease and simplicity of backup and recovery through this policy-driven approach. So, the one thing you'll see consistently in the demo is that everything, policies are sort of a key building block for us, and you sort of see that, carried over in terms of the different workflows. And I think the level of efficiency we're able to bring to the backup process in the cloud compared to, I think what customers and what you might be doing from either maintaining, manual scripts, not being able to figure out, and track sort of your snaps, all the way through, and then really having the same platform on premises in the cloud, right? We see that as sort of the key benefits here. And then the third solution is then, if you've got your data on premises, you're backing it up to Cohesity, well, what if you wanted to take those VMs and spin them up, in the cloud for either, a test dev, type of purpose, or for DR, right? And so here we bring sort of an automated way to help you sort of instantiate or spin up those VMs very easily through a capability we have, called Cloud Spin. So Cloud Spin really helps you take those VMs that are backed up, convert them to, the appropriate format, and provision it for test dev and RDR, and then you could sort of spin them back down when you're sort of done, right? So to give you an example, a customer of ours, a large university out in the East Coast, is using this capability to help bring up, they had a planned DR situation. They were going to take down things for about a day, and they wanted to bring up somewhere between 30 to 40 different websites, both internal and external. And the way they were doing it before was, it was a manual process. They couldn't bring them up, fast enough. And so with this capability, they're able to, bring these back up, very quickly, and then, take it back down and go back to sort of, their on-premises, version, and when the sort of planned disaster is done, right? And the planned, sort of, outage or shutdown is done. So that's an example of how we see customers leveraging this capability on the DR side. There's also applicability on sort of the test dev side. So key benefits here really, right? We're able to reuse backups, and again, this is sort of foundational to how our platform was designed. While backups and sort of backup and recovery data protection is sort of our building block, it's really a foundation for building on and to do other things and other use cases, right? And so that's, again, I think from a differentiation standpoint, sort of a big thing for us. We're able to sort of, do pretty efficient conversion and sort of, almost one-step automation along the way, through this capability. And then, your application teams or development teams, get much faster access to data and don't have to wait, days or weeks, to get access to a particular data set, or having to make copies of the data, right? So we're not going to spend too much time, on this session here on this capability, but definitely encourage you with some of these other solutions to come to our booth and get more information on that. So if I were to sort of summarize, right, I brought up a few different considerations at the beginning. We're able to help provide customers RPO, RTO in minutes, right? And this is night and day compared to what they have, how their sort of their solutions before, where it's hours or days, right? And then Tyson's going to speak a little bit about this in terms of how he's been able to leverage Cohesity. I talked about policies and retention schedules. Like you'll see in the demo, policies is sort of central to us, and you'll see that demonstrated. We're a API-based platform, right? So we provide a whole level of integration and ability to use APIs, in your workflows and your solution. Single interface to manage across a hybrid cloud environment. This is again, sort of big in terms of the ease of use and not having one product on premises for backup, a separate product, for the cloud, and then having multiple, different interfaces for that. global index to enable that search and recovery, right? And you'll see that, again, demonstrated, and the simplicity by which we're able to sort of, catalog all the metadata and be able to search across really, what's backed up on premises and in the cloud. And then lastly, being able to adhere to your compliance and retention policies, right? So in summary, just wanted to say that if you're thinking about sort of hybrid cloud initiative for secondary data and apps and the different workloads I talk about, really we can sort of help you at any one of those stages, right? Whether it's starting off with that long-term retention or storage tiering, really we're sort of cloud is an extension of data center. Whether it's sort of test dev, whether you sort of and bringing that level of application mobility across the data center of cloud. Whether it's sort of cloud native backup and thinking about things more from a pure cloud perspective, and then being able to bring sort of full lifecycle disaster recovery, right? And being able to sort of have both failover and failback. So hopefully that gives you a good sense for an overview to us, our solutions, and our sort of value proposition. With that, I know we're going to play a quick little video here for a minute, and then I'm going to bring Tyson up here to speak to his solution use case. I think the video is going to.
The family is bigger.
I'm so excited.
The story is wilder.
This is outrageous.
And a whole new generation of pop stars will rise.
Finally, a venue big enough to showcase my talent. And your ever-expanding head.
But when old rivals
Bark?
break out some new tricks,
We are gonna run the North Pole. You wanna take over Christmas? All right, I'm in.
I am the new Santa Claus.
You're not Santa. Think of yourself as the Ronald McDonald of the North Pole.
these future pop stars
Say hello to your Christmas surprise.
will find their own voices.
Glamour.
Woo, yeah, that girl's got swagger.
From the creators of Air Bud, Air Buddies, and Popstar
Headline, ratings go.
You'll love this.
comes the coolest,
Is he okay?
He's just not used to the cold.
Someone told me a fib. This is not Miami.
unforgettable
Ready to move and groove. Show the world the meaning of Christmas.
comedy of the season.
Maybe he won't think it was me.
And I got a need for speed.
Puppy Star Christmas.
I love Christmas specials.
Glad to be flying with the good guys again, SC. Trust me, this one's a showstopper.
With that, I'll pass it over to Tyson. Tyson will give you a little bit of overview of what Airbird does, and then you jump into kind of what they're doing with us. Thanks, Tyson.
Hey, so as you just said, I'm Tyson from Airbud. We make talking dog movies, as I'm sure you can see, and I promise it's not that jerky when you watch it on Netflix. Nice and smooth. That was pretty brutal, I'm sorry. Let's go through here. So we've got over 20 movies. We also have action movies from before that, but those are like hush-hush now. Those are like the 90s hardcore action movies you saw, the guys blowing up boats, running around, all that kind of good stuff. We've now switched over. We're making a lot of kids movies. We're working with Disney right now. We're going to be releasing a TV series on the Disney streaming channel in the next couple of months here. So we had some issues here. We needed to be able to back our stuff up, and it wasn't working great. I'm not going to lie. We had a, let's see if we can, okay. So we had a tape system. It was taking me about 2 weeks to get it all the way to the end of our data, and then I had to restart again, and that's if it made it. We also had a bunch of failed tapes. Part of it was my fault. Part of it was just, they're old tapes. We've got 2 storage places we keep them. We had 1 set in our data center. That we had a bit of an issue. I'm out camping, I'm having a good time, and all of a sudden I get told I got to evacuate due to a forest fire. Well, as soon as I leave my campsite, I get a phone call from my other guy. He's like, hey, the data center's on fire. You got to come back here right now. And I'm like, come on. This can't be happening. Like, I'm just getting kicked out because of a forest fire. Well, it turned out our data center got up to about 80 degrees centigrade. I have no idea what that is in freedom degrees, but it's hot. We're talking your beard's melting when you walk in there. I got back about a day and a half later, touched the concrete wall, and it was still hot. So let's just say that set of tapes, not so good. About 3 months later, we have all our tapes in a offsite storage, just a storage locker. And there happened to be a fire right next door. The whole place got covered in smoke, and a lot of those tapes also didn't work. The other problem was we need to restore files once every couple of months just for using in the new movies. It's not exactly easy to go through and look at 5,000 tapes, try to pick out 2 or 3 that we need to pull off like a gig or 2 of data, put them back in, drive back down to the storage place. The other problem is we're buying tapes constantly, and in order to do it properly, we have to keep upgrading the tapes. So that was getting kind of expensive, and of course, you still got to pay for storage of them. The other thing is we didn't have any way of getting anything to AWS. I was running an rsync script, which would put it onto one set, or an S3 bucket, and then it would tier off to Glacier. That doesn't work when you're working with 20 or 30 terabytes of data. And I also had to run it manually because, well, it doesn't really work well with 20 or 30 terabytes of data, so it was crashing, and see, I'm sure you get the picture. Is that the right slide? Yeah. So what Cohesity was able to do for us is they took all of that, put it together, and now we're able to archive off to Glacier. So they were able to go through our 20 or 30 terabyte set of data. And we have about 3 to 5 million files, so most people couldn't do that. They can do that, no problem. It was great. Then they take that, package it up nicely, push it off to Glacier for us. Simplicity. Man, I'm sorry, I had a lot of fun at that party last night. Feeling a bit rough here today, as I'm sure you can all tell. But the other thing is, it made it easy for me. Before I had rsync scripts, I had AWS sync scripts, I had tape backups. I'm talking 4 or 5 things. We've got 4 different places where we store data depending on what it is. Some are just for video editors, some are for sound guys, some are for the VFX guys. We've got people just putting stuff everywhere. I needed a way to simplify it all. I had 40 cron jobs going just to try and sync it all up and make it nice to package it off. So this slide's actually outdated. We now have 4 storage pools of data. We're just adding stuff on here because, you know, the CFO is like, oh yeah, let's get more data. But as you can see, we also have only 90 terabytes on here. We're right now sitting and backing up about 150 terabytes. So it has taken all our NAS pools and also a non-NAS pool. I don't know if anyone's heard of an Avid Nexus. Okay, good. It's awful. Don't use it. But you need it for editors because without that, they can't actually lock just the bin. What it's doing now, grabbing all of that data, it's grabbing it from everywhere you couldn't even believe, passing it off to Glacier, tiers it off, and then now I can actually grab just the files I need or the shot I need and pull it back. So I'm sure you guys all saw that was a really jerky reindeer. Those came from a movie about 10 years ago. So I had to go back through my tape library, find those reindeer, pull them down, let those guys reanimate them, put them all back up. Works great. Now, don't try to do that with tape. It took us about 3 months to try and find those things. So this is a picture of my dashboard here. Once again, it's been updated a bit since here. This is an older version. But as you can see, it goes pretty quick. It can chew through our 30 or 40 terabytes of data in about 30 minutes, 2 hours kind of thing. Anywhere between there, depending on what it's doing. Now as for this, as you can see, I've got a lot of jobs. The orange, I don't know if you can read that, that says future paused. So what we're doing is we make a project for each movie we do. We back up that data to the Cohesity, and once that movie's done, we don't need that data for a long time. So what we do is pack it up, send it off to Amazon, pause the job. Now that sits there, and it's got a record of every single one of those 3 to 5 million files. So I can go in there, I can pick that file I want, bring it down, we're golden. So, like I was saying before, it was taking about 2 weeks with our tape backup. That was LTO4. Now, we were told, oh, just upgrade to LTO7. Well, there's a problem with that. We have LTO2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 tapes. We go to 7, we're going to lose a whole bunch of tapes from before that. Not exactly great. We also had a guy sitting there 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, just watching that backup. Because if it fails, we need to know where it failed. We got to back up the rest of it for our insurance. So he's watching it. It was just costing us a ton of money. Plus, we also have to buy a ton of tapes. Tapes about $50, but when you're talking giant amounts of tapes here, just tossing them out, it gets pretty expensive pretty quick. The other thing is we had no way of getting it to Amazon other than that Amazon sync. Works great, but when you're talking about giant amounts of files, it just does not work. With this, it was packaged up, passed off. I guess that's you here.
So I guess before we go there, Tyson, I was going to ask you a couple of quick questions. Any thoughts on sort of, you mentioned a few different issues with the tapes. If you were to pinpoint it down to, probably the biggest hurdle you had, right? And, what would you say that was?
The biggest hurdle with tapes is just the length of time. It's chewing through hundreds of thousands of files. And when you only have 2 tape drives, just to put that data on there, it just takes too long. Not only that, but when you're backing up that much data, it's taking all day. So if I get a call to restore a file, I got an option. I can either back up our data or restore the file. You can't do 2 things at once, which was driving me nuts. So.
Got it. And then I know you were sort of mentioning that there's some interesting things coming down the road in terms of as the data is growing, right? How do you sort of see this deployment, manifesting itself, 3, 6, 9 months down the road?
So I got a call not too long ago from my CFO. He has decided that we're just going to flick that switch on the camera to 4K because that's easy to do, right? What he doesn't understand is we're going from about 250 terabytes of movie now to pretty much a petabyte of data. So we've got to be able to rapidly expand. Can't exactly do that with more tape drives easily. I can't even stand tape drives, so.
How do you see that makes sense? How do you see that sort of impacting the amount of data you're going to protect on Cohesity and sort of having to expand that?
So the file numbers are going to stay the same. It's about 3 to 5 million per movie, but the size of the files are going to go from 4 megs to 16 megs. So we're going to be quadrupling, if not more, for our data. So
okay.
Yeah, our cluster is going to go from hopefully about 150 terabytes to close to 800 pretty quick.
Wow, that's almost like 6x growth.
It is.
Yeah. Wow, impressive.
But it's only a little tiny switch on that camera, right? Just done. You're golden.
No, that's awesome. Thanks for sharing that. What best practices would you share with people in terms of, the journey you've been through and, tips or recommendations?
Tips and recommendations. That's a hard one because it's very simplistic, but I would say definitely get your stuff organized before you start backing it up. Make sure you've got a plan on how you want to back up all your stuff. So as you saw on our slides, let me see if I can pull it back here.
Yeah, you can pull it back, yeah.
Oh, I'll have to change it. There you go.
There. So as you can see, we've got all our jobs here. This has made it super easy because now when we're searching for stuff, I say, hey, I want to look at PupStar 3, and I know generally what the scene number is or the scene name. I can just pick that, dump in the number. It gives me all the files right there. It just makes it super easy. Other than that, yeah, it's so easy. There's not really any tricks you need to learn.
Got it. Awesome. Okay, cool. No, thanks, Tyson. Appreciate it.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm good. Hi, everyone. My name is Dayanand, and I'm from products team at Cohesity. And I would be demoing some of the capabilities that Samir and Tyson talked about. Primarily using or leveraging cloud storage, likes of S3, S3IA, Glacier, for long-term retention and DR use cases. So what I have here right now on the screen is an on-prem Cohesity environment that I'm going to log in right now. As soon as you log in, you are greeted with a dashboard with some tiles on it. Shows the overall health of the environment, starting with the job runs in the last 24 hours, any SLA violations, the health of the cluster in the last 24 hours, what is the kind of storage reduction or deduplication that you are getting on the environment. For example, right now it shows on the screen that I'm getting 104 X dedupe. What is the total amount of capacity that you are backing up? So right now I'm backing up 1.2 terabytes logical, but I'm only using 11.5 gigs physical on the cluster. Some more details around your protection policies, the number of protection jobs that you protected objects that you have, throughputs, and all that nice stuff. So the first thing that you need to do when you want to leverage cloud storage for long-term retention and archival use cases is that you need to add that storage on the platform. And the way to do that is you go to protection, external target, and you would register the external target. Give it a name. What is the purpose? In our case, the purpose is archival. What is the type of storage? So these are the different things that we support. Coming to AWS, we support all S3, S3IA, and Glacier. And I believe we are one of the very few vendors who support direct Glacier. We also support S3 lifecycle management. So if you have S3 to Glacier lifecycle management setup on AWS side, we support that too. Coming to Glacier, we support all three retrieval modes: expedite, bulk, as well as standard. So you would just select the type of storage you want to add. Again, coming to category, we support standard cloud, we support AWS Gov Cloud, as well as the secret C2S cloud from AWS. Here, you would give the bucket name that you would have already created, region name, and the credentials. So in our case, I've already added two such external targets. One is AWS S3, and second one is Glacier. If I go to S3, shows me my bucket name here, right? And I would go to my AWS account and verify that that bucket exists, right? So this is the bucket that I'm using. S3 target for 10.237.176 right here. By the way, can everybody see the screen clearly out of the back? Yeah? Okay. So that is the first step, is you're just adding the external target onto us. Now you obviously need to get the backups going. To get the backups going is a simple three-part process where you first of all add a source. The source is what is it that you want to back up, right? So go to protection, sources, register a source. These are the different types of sources that we support. Various type of hypervisors, physical servers, MS SQL, Oracle, NAS. Once you go to hypervisor, various kinds of hypervisor, whether it's VMware, vCenter, standalone, vCloud Director, Hyper-V, Nutanix, Red Hat virtualizer, and also if you want to add cloud as the source. So typically, for example, if I'm at on-prem and I want to back up my VMware environment, I would go vCenter, give it the IP, give it a username and password, register. That's it, right? The next step is to create a policy. The policy is sort of a set of rules or schedule that you want the backups to be running at, right? So go to create policy, give it a name. When do you want the backup to occur? Backup every day or every minute, every hour, let's say every 2 hours, and retain it locally on the platform for, let's say, 7 days, right? And if you scroll below, there are various things that you can do with the backup. We are going to cover archival. So go to archival, archive to, and you will see the external targets that you've already added to the system. In our case, I have 2 external targets, S3 and Glacier. I can choose any one of those 2, right? And how often do you want to send it to archive? So basically here we have decoupled your local backup frequency to the archive frequency. You may or may not want it to be the same frequency, right? So if you want, you can take it to the cloud after every run, or if not, you can take every day, every week, and so on, right? So let's say after every run, and retain it for 90 days, for example, right? The other things we won't touch in, but they relate to the other stuff that we do in terms of cloud spin or doing replication, intercluster replication from one side to another. And lastly, you would go ahead and create a production job. So in this case, I would create a new policy. Let's create a new policy, give it a name, reinvent policy. And I already have a vCenter source added to the system. Now at this point, it basically brings you the hierarchy of the source. Now what I'm looking at right now is my vCenter at different layers, from ESX host to the data centers, and you can drill down to each host, or you can search for the entity that you want to back up, right? It brings it up. Also, one more feature I wanted to demo here is something called auto protect. So you can go to any level at the hierarchy, whether it's a data center level or cluster level or at the ESX host level, and you can auto protect. And what that basically means is that if going forward in future there are more VMs being added under that hierarchy, that would be automatically protected, right? So in this case, let me create a new job, right? Let's go to VM listing and search for everything that is there. And let's pick up any one VM here. Let's say pick up this rel 7 VM. Basically add it to a policy. We can use an existing policy that you might have created, or you can create the policy inline while you are creating the job. So you don't have to create the policy beforehand either. So let's say create a new policy. Ignite policy, let's say 2. Back up this VM, let's say every 4 hours. Retain it for 7 days locally. And at the same time, archive it to S3, retain it in S3 for 90 days, okay? And say create. Next thing is which storage domain you want it to go to. Now storage domain is our internal construct, which is basically sort of like a logical segregation of data. Like Samir mentioned, the platform can do much more than just data protection, right? So this is, think of it as a logical segregation for different types of workloads, where some might be dedupable, compressible, some may not be, and you can have a logical segregation from that standpoint. Go ahead and hit protect. So what it has done is it's created a new job which is running right now. And what it's going to do is back up that VM onto us. Once that is done, index it. And the reason we index is for granular recoveries of file and folders. And then send it out to S3, right? While that is going, one thing I wanted to mention about the archive is that our archives are basically, sort of fully self-contained. And what that basically means is that they have the data as well as the metadata. And by metadata, I mean they have all the job information as to what is there in the archive, what is the source, what is the cluster that backed it up. And the reason why we have it is that tomorrow, let's say if there's a DR situation and the cluster that sent that archive into the cloud is no more available, the whole site got wiped out. Because of the fact that it is fully self-contained, you can have another cohesivity cluster in a different location, point it to the archive, and recover the data, right? Another thing is that when we are sending the data, it's fully deduped, compressed, and encrypted. And talking about dedupe, we do a variable length deduplication algorithm. And what that basically means is that we create a unique 20-bit hash sequences for variable data chunks, which could be from 8K to 24K, which is more efficient, right? So while this job is running, let's move on to an existing job because it will take a while for it to complete. Go to protection jobs, and we'll take a look at a couple of jobs that I already have in my system. First is this job called Archive to S3. So let's come here and look at what the job is doing. The source is my vCenter, on-prem vCenter, and it is backing up a VM called AWS W16 Gold VM. And it uses a policy called Archive to S3 policy. And if I were to see what that policy is all about, go to edit. It backs up every 4 hours, retain it locally for 3 days, and then send it to S3 after every run, retain it in S3 for 30 days. Now let's say there was a recovery that I wanted to do, right? We know what the job is doing. It's protecting the stuff on-prem, sending it out to S3. Now there's a recovery need, right? Pretty easy. Go to protection, recovery, recover, and again, we can do either a whole VM level recovery or we can do a granular file and folder recovery. Let's go to recover VMs. Now, here is where the power of platform shows you don't need to know where your stuff is. All you need to know is what is it that you are looking for. You don't need to know the job name or the cluster name or the site name. All you need to know is what is it that you want to restore, what is it that you're looking for. Let's say I'm looking for something with AWS, right? And it shows up everything that has AWS in it. And we can see that these are the jobs that back up VMs that have the word AWS in it, as well as these VMs, the AWS CentOS VM and Windows 16 Gold VM. Let's select one of these VMs for restore. Continue. Now this is going to create a task name, a task with some name. Let's say recovery for AWS demo. And it shows you all the recovery points or point in time snapshots of your VM that you can recover from. If you were to look under the stored column here, it shows local as one of the places that you can recover from, or AWS S3. So after your local retention would have expired, you won't see local as an option, and you would only see S3 because the snapshots are not available on the local platform anymore. So let's do a recovery from S3, and we'll randomly pick up any recovery point. Let's say from November 26th, 143, and we'll select AWS S3 as the recovery source. Save it. Do I want to rename my recover VMs? I would just add a prefix for today's date. Recovery location, do you want to recover it back to the original vCenter, or you want to send it out to some new location? Let's recover it back to the original location, keep the networking connected, and say finish. So at this point, as you can see, cloud retrieval is in progress. It's going to go to S3 and fetch the data from there. Coming to data traffic to as well as from S3. Another thing, while we are at the retrieve topic, I would like to mention is that because of the dedupe that we use, our uploads to S3 as well as downloads are very efficient, in the sense, like I mentioned, because of the dedupe algo that we use, we are not sending all the data chunks in their entirety to the cloud storage. And what that basically means is we are aware of what is already there in the archive. And if there is another data chunk which we are aware is already there, we would not send the same data chunk again. We would just send the hash for it, which is just 20-bit. Right? So that takes care of reduce ingress into the cloud. Same goes while we are downloading the data, in this case like we are doing the recovery. If those data chunks are already there on the on-prem Cohesive platform, we are not going to be downloading those data chunks. We would be using from the on-prem cluster. So that reduces the egress costs for the customers as well, something which is very important. So while this recovery is going on, and obviously since it's going to come from S3, it'll take a few minutes, maybe 20, 30 minutes. In the meantime, what I wanted to show was just like this recovery that I did, a VM level recovery. There was another recovery that I did yesterday for the same VM. This is the VM that we were talking about here, AWS W16 Gold VM. And I recovered it as yesterday's date. I just added a prefix for yesterday, right? So the same thing that I'm doing today. So that is insofar as a VM level, a full VM level recovery is concerned. We can also do a file level or a granular file level recovery. We can go back to the platform, protection, recovery, recover. In this case, instead of going to VMs, we will go to files and folders. And same thing applies. You can have a Google-like search, just whether it's a file or a folder, whether it's a VM or any other object, right? So again, we'll search for anything that has the word AWS in it. I have this AWS text file that was backed up from this VM called AWS W16 Gold VM, and this was the name of the protection job that backed it up. I can select this guy, and again, similar interface, same choices to the user. You want to download it from the local cluster and AWS S3, right? So it's the same workflow whether you are doing a granular recovery or you're doing a full VM recovery. So let's do AWS S3 here as well. If you wanted to add more files, you could go to add more, or you can say download now, right? So this is insofar as the granular recovery from the cloud storage. One more thing I wanted to mention here is that what we just talked about is protection of workloads from on-prem and sending it out to the cloud, right? The same mechanism, same principle, same UI, same features work for your workloads which are already there in the cloud, talking of EC2 instances, right? So I would just show you and switch over to another cluster of mine, which is running in the cloud. So as you can see, the IP is 1081.50, and just to validate that this is actually our platform running in cloud. This is basically running on an EC2 instance in the cloud, and as you can see, the private IP is 1081.50 here, right? And obviously, I'm connected over VPN. We have a VPN between our on-prem to AWS account. So you can see that right now I'm connected to the cloud edition of our platform, and again, same dashboard, same look and feel. And if I look at one of the protection jobs here, there is this protection job where I'm backing up an EC2 instance, right? And this is again one of the things that Samir mentioned. We have the native snapshot integration for AWS EC2 backups, 2 options, and obviously, native snapshot is one of the options. Here, as a part of this job, I'm backing up 2 objects, which are 2 EC2 instances in my AWS account that I just showed. And as a part of this policy, I'm backing it up every 4 hours and retaining it for 2 days. And as you can see, I'm not archiving it anywhere, right? So same thing, same logic applies here. You can go to add archive, and since I already have an external target configured here as well, I can archive to that bucket. After every run, retain it for, let's say, 30 days in S3. Right? So what now this is going to do is that the next time the job runs, it is going to leverage the new external target that I just added to the policy. So one of the things that Samir mentioned was our integration with the APIs, and just wanted to highlight that everything that I just demoed here can also be done. It does not have to be done from the UI. Can also be done from the REST APIs, using the REST APIs. And I would just quickly bring up the Swagger interface that we have for APIs, just to show that we have public APIs available for almost all of the workflows that we have. So any questions on the demo before we open it up for?
Yeah, maybe at this point, we'll sort of open it up for any questions that folks have, and we can try to address them.
I've got a question for you. Can you, if I wanted to schedule a recovery of, say, 85 servers and their associated data, and have them in their sequence, is there a way to be able to do that? And have it done automatically?
Yes. So that's where the power of our integration with the REST APIs comes into play. You can schedule it, and you can have you can define the order of the restore as well.
Question here.
So how does it work with the cost and pricing? How does the revenue model?
Yeah. So I mean, we price on a typically on a per terabyte basis. And we're sort of on a subscription pricing model, right? So we definitely make it easy for customers to get started. A typical configuration is sort of in a 3-node configuration is what typically customers start with us, and then you can sort of add as you go, right? So it's really a pay as you go model.
So more storage, more files.
Exactly.
Your cost inherently will just scale up over time because you're going to have more backups.
It's on the dedupe though. So
yeah. You want to talk about that?
How do I guess I'm just ultimately verbalize that. How do I prevent it from just like continue to grow my IT?
see, eventually, if you go and the total storage capacity is growing, then yes. But that's where the power of dedupe comes into the play. Is that after the first full rest all incrementals, you're not actually going to grow a whole lot unless your change rate is something of the order of 5% per day. But otherwise, it sort of stabilizes, and unless obviously the second factor being you are adding more environments to the mix. You're adding, but otherwise on a static environment, it's not going to change a whole lot in terms of storage usage growth.
Does that help answer your question? Sort of, yeah. I mean, I think definitely feel free to come by our booth. We can sort of get into that and some of those nuances. Yeah, in the expo hall. Yeah. Do you want to add anything to that, Tyson, in terms of the capacity side of things?
Yeah, so we generate about 100 gigs a day, but even though it's taking a snapshot every single day, we're only adding maybe 100.1 gigs a day after all the overhead. So it's not scaling out like crazy. It is getting bigger, but it's not each snapshot being its own backup. You know what I mean?
But as your archive just grows, you don't get that doesn't right because I'm backing up every day.
Yeah. So it's just incrementally.
Oh, so
bigger.
that first is full, rest is all incremental, and beyond incremental is deduped and compressed too. Yeah. So it's not like a one-to-one copy. First full, rest incremental plus deduped plus compressed plus encrypted.
And with my data, I get zero compression at all because it's all video files. So it's literally just a teeny bit of overhead for the cohesity wrapper, and then in the cloud, and it's not skyrocketing, that's for sure.
But I guess inherently you have that issue with whatever solution you use. So it's not like
Yeah, I was going to say, I mean, on order of magnitude, I mean, customers are using us, for the same amount of data they're protecting, on their prior solution, which is potentially, in most cases, a legacy solution versus us. their cost savings are in the order of 50 to 70%, right? So I mean, we see customers spending millions of dollars on their backup infrastructure, and we're sort of order of magnitude saving anywhere from 50 to 70%, right? And all the things that Anand talked about in terms of global dedupe compression, those play a big role in sort of bringing that TCO down like dramatically. I saw one more question over there. Yeah.
Can you restore a VM from on-prem and have it run off the clients, or do you have to wait for the file to copy back into the environment?
Okay, so I think you're talking about, so the question was, when you're doing a VM restore, do you have to wait for the restore to be copied back to the vCenter, or is it readily available as soon as you kick off the restore? So the answer is it is available as soon as you kick off the restore because of a feature that we call it as instant mass restores. So the storage is on us, and then in the background we do the storage vMotion. So the VMs are available as soon as you kick it off. If so, basically, I think your question is if you're backing it up on-prem and you want to restore it in the cloud. That is through our workflow that we call it as Cloud Spin. And what that does is it will do the format conversion, because when we're talking on-prem versus cloud, the format being VMDK versus AMI format, so we do have it, but that involves the conversion. That was the Cloud Spin in the policy. There was an option called Cloud Spin. That is what we use for doing that. And you can actually do both policy-based Cloud Spin as well as on-demand as you need it.
Any other questions?